Hey guys, welcome back to the Bass Tutor. My name is Tyler Fry, and I'm the Bass Tutor. So guys, today I have a really interesting topic that can be really difficult for some people, but I promise you it's really simple to understand once you can really wrap your head around it. So today, I'm going to try to teach you all about reels. Alright guys, so if you stayed through that cringy intro, then you must be really interested in the gear ratios of bait casting reels. And so I'm going to do my best right here to teach you all about them. So the first thing you need to know is where do you find the gear ratio of a bait caster? And so on every box of a bait caster, it's going to tell you what the gear ratio of the reel is when you buy it, or just if you need to keep the box around to remember. But a lot more simple way to find it is typically the gear ratio will be right here on the drag star of the reel. It'll be here on the side plate, or it'll be somewhere on this general right hand side. I know Okuma puts theirs right here, right next to the drag star, but not on it. Luz puts theirs on the drag star. Abu Garcia has theirs on the drag star, and Daiwa puts theirs over here on this little right hand corner beside the spool tensioner. So every reel is more than likely going to put it on that right hand side where the reel is, or if you're left handed, it'll be on the left hand side. So with that being said, let's break down gear ratios. So the first thing we're going to focus on whenever we're looking at a bait casting reel to figure out what gear ratio we need or want, then we're going to look at the first number. So from my experience, the slowest bait caster I've ever seen is a 4, and the fastest I've seen is a 10. So what that means is the first number is going to be a number from 4 to 10. 4 being the slowest, 10 being the fastest. Now, with that being said, the last number on the bait casting reel is 99% of the time going to be a 1. I don't know that I've ever seen a 2, but I'm sure somebody will find one out there. So every time it'll say something like 5, 1 to 1. The last number will be a 1. And what that means is that's telling you how fast, which is the 5 to begin with, is how much line that it's pulling per 1 crank of the handle. Okay, that's what the 1 is 1 crank of the handle. 1 360-degree turn. So if it's a 5, then that's however much line that company uses to pull up that much line. Or if it's a 10, then that's that amount. So with that being said, all these reels will have a different gear ratio. And whenever we break it down, there's also a second number. Okay? Most reels, it's not really going to matter. Okay? This one right here is like a 6/8 to 1. So what that is that's a fraction amount of the first number. So if it's a 6/3 to 1, it's not going to be that much different than a 6/8 to 1. When you're first getting started, just focus on that first number. It's going to save you a lot of time and a lot of headache. But just remember, it's basically just a fraction of the first number is how much more line it's going to pull up. And then the last number is per 1 crank of the handle. So if I've lost you, I'm sorry. I'll try to make it better in the description. But just remember, the first number is the most important number to you. 4 being the slowest, 8 or 10 being the fastest, sorry. So, do all of the reels have a purpose? Yes, they do. And the reason for that is each reel needs to be paired up with a specific lure. So, the way that I determine this for myself is if the reel is doing all the work, then I'm going to use the slowest gear ratio reel. So if the reel works the lure, I'm going to use a slower gear ratio. But if the rod is doing all the work, then I want to use a faster gear ratio reel. So let me give you an example. So, if I'm going out and I'm fishing ledges on the Tennessee River, I'm going to go throw a big old crankbait. What am I going to use? What's the first thing I'm going to pick up? It's probably going to be something like this 5:1 gear ratio. This is one of the slower gear ratio reels out there. And the reason for that is that rod isn't doing a ton of work, okay? I'm casting it out there. After that, the rod is basically just there in case I catch a fish, then I can lean into it. But with that being said, I'm not out there like with a jerk bait. I'm not out there working the bait with the rod. Instead, I'm just sitting here keeping a constant reel. Every once in a while, I'm going to speed it up, and I'm going to make that crankbait do something real erratic on the bottom. So the reel is super crucial to do all the work. Versus something like, say I was fishing a jig, a big football head jig. What am I going to be out there doing? More than likely, I'm going to be dragging it real slow with the rod, or I'm going to be kind of bouncing it with the rod, and it's going to be bouncing off the bottom. So I'm going to use something like this 8:3 gear ratio. This is actually my flipping jig reel. So I'm going to flip a jig into there. I'm going to work it with the rod. And then what that faster gear ratio allows me to do is if a fish bites it or it runs at me, that gives me more time to reel down real fast. It's going to pick up more line with this faster gear ratio, and then I can drive that hook into the fish. Versus something like this deep crankbait reel, typically they're not going to hit it real hard and knock a ton of slack out of it. If they do, you're going to catch up to them, and you're going to be using a moderate action rod, so you're going to be able to just kind of sweep into them. So with that being said, every reel has a purpose. So say something like a spinnerbait. If I'm fishing a spinnerbait, typically I'm going to throw it around a lot of cover, maybe some trees, a lay down, a brush pile, something like that. I'm going to throw it out there, and I'm going to be reeling it, but I'm also going to take the rod every once in a while, and I'm going to kind of pop it real quick, then I'll reel it, then I might lift it up, and I'm going to reel it. So the reel and the rod are both getting some action into the equation. So I'm going to use something like this 6:8 reel, because the reel is doing most of the work, but I'm also going to need a little bit just in case that fish comes up and charges that spinnerbait. I want a little bit faster gear ratio till I drive the hook. That's why I use a 6:8 versus like a 6:3. Doesn't make a ton of difference, but for me it's a confidence booster. I know good and well that if that fish comes and hits me hard, I can catch up to it and I can drive the hook. So guys, I hope that kind of makes sense to you. The first reel, or the first number, is the most important on the reel and the gear ratio, versus the last number isn't important. So your first two numbers are the ones that you're really going to want to focus on. And so I'm going to kind of make a list down below in the description and kind of tell you what reel gear ratio I use for each technique. For a lot of techniques, I'm obviously not going to be able to cover them all because the description would be 90 foot long. But I am going to try to cover a lot of the basics. So really, the most thing to remember, or the biggest thing to remember, usually you're going to be able to get away with the 6:8 or something like that in the 6-speed reel gear ratio category. If you're buying your first bait casting reel, I would recommend getting something in the 6-speed reel, 6:8, 6:3, something like that. What that's going to allow you to do is it's going to allow you to slow down if you need to fish a big crankbait, but you're also going to be able to speed up if you need to fish something like that jig and it's not going to be super hard. And then you can start working into the different gear ratio categories. But if you were just picking one reel, if you were buying one reel right now and you only had one setup, I would go with a 6-speed reel on a 7-foot medium heavy rod. That's going to be your bread and butter. That's going to cover every basis that you need until you're able to start moving into different subcategories and picking up different gear ratios. So guys, I hope this quick little video helped. I hope it helped you understand the gear ratios of a bait caster. And if it did, make sure to share it with your friends. Let them know so we can get more people into this awesome industry and help them learn about the bass fishing world. Guys, I hope you enjoy and you're able to get out there and wet a line. We'll see you guys later.